Hi there, this is John Nathan, and I'm here to tell you your therapy's showing. And while we praise and support that endeavor here, we want to highlight our next subject matter expert who has brought their therapy to the forefront of existence, of tabloid, of entertainment, and led us through the path of what an example of what public scrutiny and private investment, private security of self can lead an individual to fight and defend for what they want. And for this focus, we'll bring Mr. Robert Downey Jr. to the forefront of our understanding. From my understanding of him as a celebrity, as a public persona, America's bad boy from the Brat Pack to Oscar nominee for his portrayal of Charlie Chaplin in the early 90s. And then also being America's bad boy, the teen heartthrob of the Brat Pack through the late 80s into the 90s. Sarah Jessica Parker's boyfriend, the tabloid fodder that brought him into our homes and into our zeitgeist as somebody to observe, to be followed, to be understood. And knowing that when we approach the type of entertainment that used to be, that there's another version of that we can look at from today's lens, which shows the recovery and the effort and the existence of therapy within your life, how to implement the trainings or the teachings, the lesson that you can learn through therapy, the tools that they give you, and to understand that those are more important than what we give them credit for. To say, are you working on your skills and tools? But to know how to implement those and how to express and design and to explain those to others who might need to have the same information, who might need to know what it is that has shifted or changed about you as a person. So with Mr. Robert Downey Jr., a personal favorite, I've been compared to his emphatic gesturing a lot. I've been compared to his inability to take a breath in between sentences as he continues on with his lines and goes through each and every script that he designs and discusses throughout most of the movies that we see him in. And knowing that dates all the way back to to pre-existence for me. But no, 1985 with his introduction in Weird Science, that hair, that understanding that like this was the it boy. And he had family dynamic and a famous father, famous Hollywood repertoire in that era that was very scrutinized, very micro lens on individual and behavior and conduct. And he brought that in such a cool and designer way that people wanted to be like. They wanted to be like this guy. And I remember this specifically. He was the teen heartthrob with like Andrew McCarthy and Ducky and all and Molly Ringwald and all those young teens that were the new sale as opposed to in the 60s and 70s where the teenagers looked in their 30s and the 30-year-olds looked in their 50s. And it was just a different time and a different aesthetic, and we were brought into the fresh, young, and inspiring look of these bad boys and heartthrobs and sex symbols. And that does work on people. And that has an effect on the way people view themselves, on the way that their behavior expresses. The fact that behavior is an expression of your environment. And so to be in that level of scrutiny creates negative behavior. It creates negative behavior feedback loops. And you get stuck in concepts like addiction and lack of sobriety, unable to progress, grow, develop, move, have any form of renaissance whatsoever. And so to know that he put himself not only through that publicly with a lot of public disgrace and shame that was brought into the forefront of a bunch of magazines and newspaper covers that we had no business actually investing in. This was someone's personal experience. But to know that like it did not go in vain, that it was something I paid very closely attention to because it was a person who went through a lot of the same situations that I went through, whose behavior was exhibiting of the design and environment that he was being impressed and suppressed and oppressed into. Not to say it was correct, not to say it was okay, but to say it has an explanation and an understanding. And that once that understanding was processed through that individual, it might have taken prison. It might have taken, some time inside. It might have taken that meditation or the yoga or the therapy that he very clearly demonstrates through the ability to bring that talk show apology tour around through the early 2000s for us to show what rehab and sobriety and commitment to his new wife, Miss Susan Downey, back in 2005 were, part of the thing that I think was most impressionable about me when trying to identify where Mr. Robert Downey Jr.'s therapy is showing is that in the process of conversation through most of the, back then as well, you had to go through these talk show apology tours. There was no YouTube for you to just make your apology video on. There was no, there was David Letterman, and that was about it. And you had like 2 chances to be able to get an entirety of a public to feel and think in the way that you want them to, the way you want them to perceive you. And so know that he did that masterfully through rehab, through sobriety, into a renaissance of relationship and then Marvel cinema fame, that he kind of fell into that. But it was a level of consistency and effort and work that we all needed to see somebody who had been through an entire gauntlet, an entire ringer of life and drug and sex and rock and roll and loss. And under all circumstances still come back and show up and show the consistency and create the relationships as Tony Stark that we all needed to be able to reconnect with him in that. And part of, again, the theme that we see is reforming those relationships and showing his therapy. He implements things like not going more than 2 weeks without seeing his wife. It's a very standard practice for a lot of people who spend time apart, but implementing that had to have come from therapy. That had to have come from a therapy conversation or, understanding that therapy works. And so then setting boundaries and rules within each other is a thing that creates the home and family dynamic that allows for your continuity, that allows for you to keep going. And to understand his very clear and concise advocacy for things like AA and the 12-step program, for his implementing of yoga and meditation and therapy in his life, in his work, in his expression, in the way that he does not allow for the pontification of what he went through, but to show the growth and development. Like, are you paying attention or not? I think that's the most commendable version of sobriety that I've seen, that I want to emulate, within the understanding of you're just doing it. You are doing it. And yes, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of private scrutiny and work that goes into yourself. The self-assessment, objective and subjective, while non-judgmental, is something that you don't get from the public eye. You don't get that from the magazine. It's designed to be judgmental. And to know that he's able to not only navigate that and allow for it to be, but then also do the tasks at hand and bring the example of what that level of what the level of what somebody who's willing to fight and defend for what they want and need, what that looks like. Needed to see it, needed to have it, knowing that that has been such a brilliant portion of that consistency for the characters that he's able to bring to the cinema for us, but also to that Marvel universe, and to bring that entertainment back around from being the fodder into being the father of the entertainment that we need and want, that we consume, and that allows for us to learn and grow and develop the most clear conscious, with the most clear intention of what a storytelling version, or what a storytelling experience can be like, and what a cinematic experience can do for us as a society and for him as an individual. So, Mr. Robert Downey Jr., we're proud to report your therapy's showing, and we appreciate you bringing that forward for all of us to have the example, to have the understanding, to show that it can be accomplished and that it can be consistent and that it can be continuous through the rest of your life. And we hope the best for Mr. Robert Downey Jr., his family, friends, and all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and for you, our listener out there. See you next time.